Coming to you straight from the Rio Grande and beyond. Broadcasting to the four corners of the globe. So grab your seat, your coffee, or your sundowner.
Okay, everybody, here we go.
On point, as always. This is Gloves Off. Gloves Off.
Back at you, Gloves Off. I'm Paul Buitron, and today I have a great guest, Dr. Petra Deeter, and we're talking about parental alienation, and especially nowadays with some fathers or some non-custodial parents are going to be receiving their kids, and especially for the summer vacations here in Texas and throughout the United States, kind of similar. So it'll touch base with a lot of them that are going to be alienated once more, and the differences in the scale of alienation, and we'll go into the roots of that. Doctor, how are we doing today?
I'm good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here.
No, well, thank you for continuing your work that you do, and and I want to ask you a couple of questions. Just first, for the folks out there, explain to us a little bit about you, your background, and we'll take it from there.
Sure. I am an adult child of parental alienation. For people that are not familiar with parental alienation, and sometimes even the alienated parents don't realize that they are what parental alienation is, and especially for children, right? Children don't usually know that they are victims of parental alienation. So parental alienation is a situation where someone, usually one parent, try to manipulate and brainwash and influence the child, sometimes very blatantly, sometimes very subtly, to influence the child's perspective about the other parent, and destroying that relationship between the child and the other parent. So I was that child, and so it sounds a little bit strange, but we use that term adult child of parental alienation because that was my childhood. I obviously did not know what parental alienation was. I grew up and took on the false narrative of my mother and rejected my father for no good reason. I apologize for this. And so I did not have a relationship with my father, unfortunately, all of my life. And then, I'm so sorry. I don't know why. My throat really hurt right now for no reason. So I took on the false narrative of my mother and rejected my father for no good reason. And unfortunately, as a result, I did not have a relationship with my father all my life. By the time that I realized this, it was too late because my father had passed. So, and we can talk about how I figure out the truth, which is always a challenge. But anyways, that's my background. Today, as an adult, I realize that this is a very widespread problem. We have so many people growing up with that missing piece in their life. And we're not talking about tiny little piece. We're talking about half of your identity, half of your makeup of who you are. And unfortunately, that had a tremendous impact in how you are as a human being. And that consequence carries on for the rest of your life. It impacted every aspect of my life, and especially, your sense of self-esteem, your ability to connect with other people and have healthy relationship, right? So you end up with really cycle of toxic relationship, and you're having trouble open yourself up to the right people and connect to the right people, and you'll make yourself vulnerable to toxic, abusive situations. So there's all type of consequences, not to mention self-esteem, because you're being spoon-fed all these horrific stories about one of your parents. So it makes you feel like what have I done as a child for me to get rejected or get not loved by one of my parents, right? So things like that. So anyway, that's my background. And so because of that, I don't want that to happen to more people. I wanted to figure out how to help so that we can, I want to participate in that helping so that we can remove this problem. Ideally, if we can just remove it completely, but if we can help some way to minimize this problem, because the impact, and I just mentioned about the impact on the child, but the impact on the parent that lost the relationship, it's a heartbreaking. I can't even describe the amount of pain and suffering that that parent has to go through emotionally, let alone the kind of things that they have to deal with through the court system, through false allegation, through financial distress, through losing of reputation and relationship with their friends and their family, and the misjudgment, the re-victimization of the society on that parent because they don't have a relationship with their child. Unfairly, that relationship is removed from their life.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that relationship because as I've learned from you and others, there's different levels of alienation. There's the alienation that can be don't talk to your father on the phone, to you're not seeing them at all, they're keeping the child away. Don't go with them on the weekends, but you can go with them on certain weekends. And all of a sudden, there's a lot of ways of that alienate in it, and it's an alienation that escalates. First it stops, don't talk to them on the phone, then you're not going to see them now. And if you do not put a stop to that, it's going to get to the point that you're not going to see the child. It's literally going to be alienated. And I've also learned that some of the alienation actually happened while people were married. They were being alienated, but they didn't see the red flags. And those were the extremes. And all of a sudden now you get divorced, boom, bingo, it blows up. And I've looking at a large similarity in a lot of cases. To me, and this is a question I'll ask to you, what I've seen is everybody, it leads back to the courts. It leads back to the courts. They ignore the fact, if, for example, we'll use 2503, which is a penal code here in Texas, which is interference with child custody, which is a state jail felony. It's never been enforced in the state of Texas. DA say, oh yes, we enforce it, but after how many incident reports that have come in, it took us years to change it to the point that it will be up to a municipality to give a tariff for the incident to go forward. Then you can take it from there. But what occurs is it's never been dealt with. So it tells me that once you go to the court, they're going to ignore it also. And by the time you go to court to try to see if you get time made up, it takes 6 months to a year down the road. And sometimes you don't get anything. The judge kind of like ignores it and kind of high fives you out of the courtroom. You know what I'm saying? And it's something that to me it's embedded in a lot of different cultures, subcultures that we have in society. One, the judicial system. Second, the law enforcement community. And third, our educational community, meaning our schools. And the fourth now that is coming into play that are getting involved are the physicians. Okay, they're writing up reports about it as well. So how do we stop that? First of all, the question is, do you think through your experience and what you've seen and through your research, do the courts have anything to do with it? Instigating?
Yeah. So you have touched on a lot of important points, right? And I wanted to kind of go back and touch on a few of that, kind of break it down a little bit more before we go into your final question there, which is, so the first thing you started was talking about different degree severity, right, of parental alienation. So you're right, parental alienation is not just like, oh, this thing. There's a whole spectrum of it, from, like you said, mild to the really extreme, where the parents have zero contact, and sometimes parents have no idea if the child is still alive, like they have not seen, have heard, have no idea where the child lived, what the child's name, and anything for sometimes decades, right? So that's the extreme severe end of it. And then you have the mild stuff that sometimes even happen in the family, right? And so let's talk about some of that. For example, like you could have a situation where, you know, parents are still married, and then when it comes to maybe Christmas, right, or birthday, let's say the parents go and buy a birthday present for the child, and then the mother or father, I mean, it could be either. I'm not gender biased when it comes to this, because this is not a gender issue. But let's say the mother grabbed the birthday present that both parents bought for the child, and while the father's busy, maybe not home yet from work, gives this present to the child without the father there, and get all this, and then the father home, you know, there's no more acknowledgement, right? The same with Christmas, right? Doing things, you know, things like that, or something else more subtle, maybe, you know, the mother trying to discipline the child and said, no, you cannot have, let's say, you cannot have dessert before, you know, or now it's your bedtime, you have to go to bed, you know, you're not staying up and watch movie or TV. And the father said, what the big deal, right? So the father had invalidate the mother's authority in front of the child, and that's the thing. Like, it's different when the parents disagree on parenting, and behind the door, without the child there, discuss with each other and say, hey, I disagree. I think that he or she should be able to go to sleep a little bit later. You know, she's already whatever, it's weekend, it's fine. That's the normal parenting. That's an appropriate parenting technique. But if you invalidate a parent in front of the child, invalidate the authority, the power, encouraging the child to be, saying things like, you know, let's say the child and a parent having a conflict, and you know, let's say the father, the mother or the father, you know, saying to the child, hey, you can't do this and that, and then, you know, the other parent look at the father or the mother and go, oh, not again, you know. But it's that kind of thing where you undermine the authority, and encouraging the child to be able to be rude to the other parent, to be disrespectful, right? So you got that kind of things that you still consider mild, right? So clinically, mental health professionals break the severity of parental alienation into 3 different levels. These are not like discrete. It's not a clear break point, really. It's a spectrum. But just to make it easier, so the mild is where you got that kind of interaction going on. There's disrespect, and there's, you know, encouragement of misbehavior. There's you know, undermine the authority of the other parent, you know, that kind of thing. And then you got the moderate. Moderate is in the middle, where, you know, the child, you know, especially in divorce, the child still go and see the other parent. But when the child goes, the child is rude and cold and withdrawn, you know, maybe go to their room the whole weekend and won't talk to you at all, and then it's time to go, they go. You know, when they talk to you, they're very, very rude and cold. Sometimes they may trying to play the game of, oh, you know, I don't want to go this weekend because, you know, at your house you have a dog, or, you know, at my house, at my mom's house, I have a swimming pool and you don't, and things like that, right? So it's kind of moderate, the child kind of resisting the relationship. You still have contact, but the child have already showed these manifestations in behaviors of resisting or rejecting the parent. And then you got the severe, where the child completely rejects the relationship. So you could force the child to turn up, but the child really absolutely will not have a relationship with you. Or the child even outright refuse to turn up to your house. You're not able to get the child to come. Sometimes it's as severe as we talk about, where, you know, you don't even know where the child lives anymore for years. You know, so things like that. So that's the severity. And you're right, it doesn't just happen to be the severe immediately. It's something that kind of progression. It may be fast progression, maybe it can skip some step, but it doesn't just happen like that overnight. And the reason it feels like it's overnight is because you miss all these red flags along the way, all these things along the way. And the problem is because there's such a lack of awareness out there in general, like as a whole society, that when we look at something like that, we cannot detect it. We cannot realize that, oh, this is parental alienation. You know, when one parent just go, no, what is the problem with having ice cream right now? Let the child have the ice cream. You just go, oh, yeah, no, he's just being rude to me, or she's being rude to me. You know, the other parent just not being nice. Or you might just think, yeah, I just have conflict with my spouse. You know, things like that. And then it also there's other time where, you know, the child refuses to turn up to your house, and then you kind of complain, or the child being cold or rude, right? And maybe you talk to your family and friends about it, and they're just sort of, well, you know, it's teenager, you know, that's just how they are. They're gonna grow out of it, right? So people misread these red flags, and so because we don't do anything about it, and then also there are people that recognize that this is a real problem. Like a parent might look and go, this is terrible. You know, this child was just cold and rude to me, and the other parent would not allow me to have, you know, I have to really struggle to get the child to come to my house when it's my time. So they see all these problems, they recognize it's a problem, yet they don't know what to do about it. So you have all that stuff. So then if you don't do something, then it end up to be the severe situation. Or you do something wrong. So, you know, because you look at this thing, you recognize it's a problem, but you get frustrated. Like, because when the child, let's say, being cold or rude, you snap and you're like maybe scream at the child, maybe take the phone away, maybe, you know, doing things that are unreasonable, right? Or if the other parent badmouth about you to the child, so then the child go to you and say, oh, you know, dad or mom said that you are whatever, right? Let's say you, and then you get angry and you go, are you kidding me? Like he or she is even worse than me. That's the, you know, deadbeat dad or whatever. I'm the better mom, you know. So you participate in the counter attack, right? So you're doing the wrong things. It also leads to the severe parental alienation, and that's the problem. Is, you know, how do we raise? And that's the question. That's really I don't know if we have a quick and easy solution. You know, there are a lot of things that we need to do to fix it, but yeah, how do we raise the awareness so that parents and everyone can recognize the red flags and figure out what is the appropriate solution early on so it doesn't get to the point where it's severe. When it's severe, it's possible to fix, but it is really, really difficult. And then you mentioned about like all the different entities, right? All the different stakeholders that participate in it. Like you're talking about, you know, police, you know, mental health professionals, physicians, teachers, right? Neighbors, friends, family. There's so many people. Parental alienation doesn't happen in isolation because we all live in society. So the children go to school, the children have friends, the children have neighbors, the children have doctors and therapists and dentists and all that. And you go to work, you have your college and co-worker, and you have friends and family and relatives and all that. Yeah, everyone plays a role whether they realize it or not. And how they react to certain things have impact on that level of parental alienation. They could, something that you do could help reverse it, or you could actually inadvertently push it to make it worse. And so, you know, raising awareness is not just about for parents, not just about children, but really about everybody involved. The other thing that you brought up is about the court system. And this is why the court system is so important and so pivotal in this, is because, right, as a society, we are a law driven society. We don't get to do things we're not supposed to. And sometimes there are severe consequences, sometimes there's inappropriate consequences, but nevertheless, you know, we are a society that's driven by the law. So the court system have a say, has a power in what is the true outcome of, well, no, I can't say the true because sometimes the court decision doesn't do anything. But anyway, the court is who determine the custody agreement, the custody order between the parents with the child, as in, when do you have the child? Do you have the decision making when it comes to choosing a doctor? Do you have a decision making when it comes to which school does the child go to? Who's paying for what? And who is having the child on the child's birthday? All these kind of things. When it comes to decision about this child, the court has so much power in that. Unfortunately, there's so many problems with the court system that create and making this problem so much bigger. Because one, we have lack of awareness. So we have judges that don't understand this. So they misread the sign, right? So when you see, and this is the thing, alienators are manipulator, right? They are there to create false narrative to the child and to other people. So they're actually very good at coming up with stories and how to present, to make the other parent look like, a really bad human being, a really bad parent, right? So there's that part of it, is that they are good manipulator, and judges sometimes fall for that. So we have that. We have judges that are not aware, and then we have judges that is aware of parental alienation. But when you look at this system, we have so many elements in it. So guardian ad litem, we have custody evaluator, you have supervisor for custody visit, we have police that sometimes overseeing custody change. Right? We have all these different elements. Judges sometimes doesn't get to make decision without input of all these people. And if you have a guardian ad litem, which is the person that's supposed to speak on behalf of the child's voice, the child's best interest, if the guardian ad litem make a particular recommendation and the judge disagree with that, he or she can make a decision that completely opposite to what the guardian ad litem make recommendation. But he or she is risking making a decision that's wrong or that being considered unethical, because this person is supposed to be on the ground having contact with the child and having real information. So now they are not being able to make decision without all these people involved. So if you have all these people involved that got it wrong, then the judge on top of it is not going to be able to make the right decision. And then on top of that, you've got lawyers that are incentivized in a way that, sometimes lawyers are unethical. So, the longer the case gets dragged out, the more conflict, the more money they're going to be paid. So they're going to encourage conflict, and then they support the alienators. You wanted to say something, please?
I've seen lawyers inside a case that were arguing against each other. Later on that night, having dinner together and having drinks together, sitting down together and laughing. Understand?
Right. So you're talking about collusion. You're talking about unethical behaviors where they have, interest, motive. They have, people should be able to have relationship with people because they're still human beings. They're not, just because they're judged doesn't mean that they get locked up in a cell and have no relationship. So it's okay that sometimes they do have relationship, but conflict of interest is something that the system, need to take into consideration. It's actually a big deal. Like the same with, you have a situation where maybe one parent is the cousin of the cop who then write up a false accusation about child abuse against the other parent, right? We have that kind of situation.
You have that. You see, you have that the human formula, which also has something in there that's called corruption and those tendencies, and you will see that. I've seen people call fathers that are trying to be inside their child's life as deadbeats, and the police would say it, burst it out like if it's nonchalantly, like if they know what they're talking about. They'll say it in court. They'll say it in front of others. I've seen principals do it the same way. That's why I said it's a huge culture that we have to change. Not only the law enforcement, the educational system, and go down the line all the way up to the judicial system. For example, a lot of parents don't know this. I used to when had my kids in a parochial school, and I was paying for that. I've been divorced now for 11 years. I have 10 months before my last one ages out. And there's different levels of, and I'm not going to talk about my story. I mean, I can if you want, but what I'm talking about, there was issues when my kids were in grade school and they had to be there, and it was always their extracurricular activities of certain clubs were on the first, third, and fifth Saturdays of the month. That's when one, as a father, gets them. You're not seeing them anywhere else. Let's say you have a trip to take them to SeaWorld or whatnot. All of a sudden, oh, you have to be there at 9 o'clock in the morning at school for this progression of studying, or this progression of, because they're going to train for this play. And I told myself one time, and I said, wait a minute, this is continual. I called the Mother Superior, the director, the principal, and I said, listen, how come you all have it on the first, third, and fifth? And she goes, oh, it's because that teacher's divorced and she doesn't have the kids on there, the father's desk. But don't you know that in the state of Texas, all fathers have it on the first, third, and so is this just discrimination on one side? So those little minute things are set that way. Well, guess what else is set that way? Tournaments in school for volleyball, tournaments for cheerleading. All the major trips are held on those days because that teacher cannot leave, because her children are with her exes or with their fathers, right? So everybody else has to follow through that. So that's just one side that continues. The second side is whether or not you are able to have the report cards and have the paperwork and be able to see the child, all their grades and so on and so forth, and be able to be on there. It never happens. Why? Because the principals will change it back to the custodial parent, whether it's a mother or whether it's a father. Whoever is custodial, they'll put it there, even though the non-custodial parent has the ability to do that. So and you fight it, because I fought it out year after year to go back in there and change it. And somewhere along the line, they'll rechange it back again. It's a never ending story, because it's not only, like you said, the police or the judges, it's everybody that claims this whole entity. So they're all helping in the alienation, And then when something goes wrong, the first person they blame is the father. Oh, the kid got on drugs because the father wasn't around. The kid got in a fight because the father's not around. The kid was absent to school. He was playing hooky. He's being absent. He's hanging around with the wrong crowd because the father's not around. The police say that. Principals say that. Teachers say that. Counselors say that. Judges say that. So how do we change that culture? Because I know a lot of non-custodial parents, both men and women, that fight to be part of their children's lives. And I see where many of them are so beat out of shape that they just lose it. They lose it along the way. And you can see those walk around like a zombie, like they're lost someplace. Excuse me. And when they get to that level, it's already too late. I mean, they've been beaten up to a pulp throughout the whole system. They've already been inside the penal system, beaten up because guess what? They lost their job. Guess what? They couldn't do this. They couldn't change that. And the attorney general goes after them. And guess what? Now they're inside the penal system. And this was a good father or mother that was trying the best to be there. And it's sad. So I think the top of the line, the ones that have the final say-sos, are the judges.
But yeah, the judge has a lot of say. But like you said, everybody else too. And sometimes, a judge might have good intention, but they have, caseload is another thing, right? A judge have like a huge stack of cases and they have to go through. And sometimes they're given 20 minutes per case. And yet you have a very complex situation here with a lot of nuances and how easy it is to understanding and misread the sign. So now you got, so definitely their decision has such a huge impact on the child's life, but yet they're not given enough tool to solve this problem. And on top of that, this is a conversation that I had recently with a professional in Germany, actually. And it's a very interesting conversation in that you have a law system, you have a court system that have no feedback whatsoever, no accountability whatsoever. You go to a restaurant, you read the reviews before you turn up. You go, oh, is this a good one? You know, like what kind of reviews do you get? You know, you get to choose. You know, and then if there's feedback on the system where the Yelp review said, you know, the service is really bad, you know, the waitress is, you know, really rude. You know, as a restaurant owner, you can go, you know what, I need to change. I need to hire a better waiter, right? The court system has zero feedback. There's no evaluation of what is the outcome of this child that I made a decision on. I have just said that this child will not be able to see the father anymore. I have made a decision that this child will not see a mother anymore. Do we go back in 6 months, in a year, in 2 years, in 10 years to see what that impact is? Did I make the right decision? No. Okay, I made a court order, done. I never think about that case again until they come back to court. And by that time, I will not remember what this case is because I'm a judge. I probably see a million cases. So, right? So we have that kind of situation where there's no feedback loop. So there's no way for the system to evaluate and make improvement. And then there's no accountability because I made this decision. If it is wrong, there's nothing that's going to happen because there's immunity for the judge. The judge is protected. So even if he made an unethical decision, even if he's corrupted and ruined this child's life, he's not going to be punished in any way. So that's a lot of kind of different things that's wrong with the system. And this is, you know, and we have judges that are ethical, and yet we already talk about the challenges. But even when they are ethical, it's still really difficult for them to get it right, let alone we talk about all other things, other situations when you have judges that are not ethical or not competent, not qualified, not knowledgeable, then you have a whole lot bigger problem. And unfortunately, that's what we are dealing with. And you're talking about, you know, how do we fix this? You know, it's a very big problem, and it's so complex. I mean, we were just talking about how many layers it is, and how many people, different people that are involved, how many elements of the system that are involved. So, because we're talking about such a complex problem, it's not going to be an easy or fast solution, and it really takes everyone involved, and we have to fix it at all levels. You know, and you know, on top of everything that we're talking about, we also have this whole movement of people that go and intentionally counter the concept of parental alienation, denying that it exists, denying that it's a valid problem, denying that my lived experience was trauma. They actually refuse to acknowledge that what I lived through was abuse. And that's the problem, is if you don't even acknowledge that it's a problem, how are we going to fix this? You know, so we have all that type of problem. So really, to fix it, you really need everybody to participate. And it's involved, you know, raising awareness. It's involved training and education to improve skills. It's involved changing the law so that we can set the appropriate boundary. It's changing accountability at all levels so that people actually make the right decision. And if they do make a wrong decision, there's accountability so that other people can see that, oh, I better make the right decision. And then we also need to have solution and support for victims, for family, for children. You know, children, like I mentioned at the beginning, it's almost impossible for children to know that they are alienated children. And I tell you what, as a child, I missed my father so badly. I long for him. I dream for him to come and save me. And yet, every time there's any interaction, I was rude and cold and absolutely rejected him. There's a conflict, talking about a conflict. So within myself, I love him, but I cannot show that. And I don't even know that. You know, it's very complex. So How do we raise awareness even for the children, for the parents, and the kind of support that we need? So, really, we're talking about a very, very big problem that needs solution at all levels. And then we also talk about how the system is incentivized the wrong way, meaning, with the lawyers. The longer the case gets dragged out, the more conflict it is, the lawyers going to get paid more. And then something else is that parents, right? We're talking about the life of a child. Yet if parents can't afford a lawyer, too bad. That's your problem. But if you are a criminal and you don't have a lawyer, guess what? You can have a free lawyer, a public defender who will work on your behalf when you are a criminal. But if you are a good, loving parent who can't afford to fight for your child's life, the system said, well, too bad. Your problem. We're going to leave you.
Listen, I've been in several meetings and spoken with trustees of the schools and principals and so on and so forth, and police and counselors. They all blame the father, especially if the mother's a divorcee. They all blame every single one of them blames the father for whatever the child did. Oh, the child did this because of this. Child did this because of that. Well, he doesn't live with them. The mom doesn't allow the child to be with the father. Understand what I'm saying? The mom always cries, "Oh, I'm here, but the father doesn't want to see him." No, you're the one that's not sending him away. Understand what I'm saying? Yes, there is still fathers that don't want to. Yes, I see that. There is that for those people out there. But the vast majority of fathers want to be part of their child's life. And they're being kicked out. And this goes for mothers and fathers, those are being alienated. But what I'm seeing that on this perspective and through my experiences, and once you go into the school systems, they attack because there's a lot more moms living by themselves with their kids and their fathers single that live with their kids. And what I'm saying is there's more fathers that are being, how can I say, criminalized by being deadbeat, and you left your child, you did this, and so on and so forth down the road by educators. All the blame is given to them, while they're the ones that are allowing this stuff to happen in the schools. I'm talking about in the schools. And when fathers call in there and say, "I want to see my grades," "Oh, you can't. You're not on the decree." "Yes, but I am." It takes you 6 months to change it, a year to change. It's always a pressure. You got your kids for 18 years. I feel for those that just got divorced and their child's is 1 or 2 years old. It's eventually the mom or the father that ended up with that child at a young age. Eventually, if he doesn't have a mean streak, will alienate that kid eventually. Maybe when he's 13, 14, they're going to start, they'll push that way. It'll end up that way. And it'll end up that way because of the court systems. Because once it can get away with one thing, they can get away with it again and again. And they see that the courts are actually with them. And to me, the courts are the ones that are actually fueling this ego of that alienator to say, "I can do whatever I want. Nothing's going to happen to me." Is that what you say?
Yeah. So I wanted to highlight something that you brought up, which is alienation is not a gender issue. It happens to both mothers and fathers. And it can be caused by both mothers and fathers and other people. And yes, the school definitely participated in it, sometimes inadvertently, sometimes intentionally. And and I agree, there's definitely a societal gender bias against father. And that movement that I was talking about earlier, where they're trying to push this thing where they deny the existence, the reality, the suffering of victims of parental alienation, they are very much driven by this gender bias agenda where they say fathers are abusive, father are bad, father, and then, yes, like you said, the rest of society turned around and said, oh, it's father's fault the children are damaged. We have this, like, it's talking about re-victimizing the victim over and over again. And it's like a catch-22. You cannot get out of it. You're stuck in this thing because you don't get any break. So definitely there's that. Talking about the school, yeah, I definitely see, because of the lack of awareness, both on parent side and the teacher side. So parents sometimes don't realize what their rights are. So, if they hear the other parents said, oh, you're not allowed to, they would just go, oh, I guess I'm not allowed to, right? They don't educate themselves. So sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes they would just go, I guess, and then they go to school and they try to get, let's say, school records, like you said, or let's say volunteer for a field trip. And then the teacher says, oh, you're not allowed to. They just kind of walk away. They don't understand where their right is. So there's that. And then there's those people that understand that they have the right. And by the way, if you are a parent, you have the right to access to your child's school records, unless if there's a court record that specifically spell out that because you're a dangerous father or mothers and we have to completely, block you and you're whatever it is. It actually have to spell out that you cannot have access. If it doesn't spell out, even if you don't have custody of the child, you have the right to the school record, the medical record of your children, and many other things. So really trying to go and look in and understand where your rights are. So there's that. So there's that problem of parents don't understand their rights. But then there's also a problem of parents that do understand their right and go, okay, I know I should be able to get the records. They call the school and the school say, oh yeah, no, we're not going to give it to you. They don't know what to do. Even though they know that this is wrong, they don't know who else to contact. Well, you need to go up to the superintendent level. You have to go up to the court. You have to go up to the police and go, this is my right. And you have to go to the school district. Sometimes you have to go to the head of the school. That kind of thing. You sometimes you have to put your foot down, set the boundary, and demand for your right. And parents sometimes are non-conflict people. They don't want to have to deal with it unless they're afraid, because we have a lot of us have the natural fear of authority, and teachers come across as authority. So even though we know that this is wrong, we'll just accept it, right? So there's that kind of problem. Now talking about the teacher side, also there's a lack of awareness. You see a mother or a father bring a child to school and say, oh, his mother doesn't want anything to do with him. You just gotta believe in that. And then the father start to tell these, like wild story about, oh, she's a prostitute, or she's into drugs, and sometimes you buy into that story because as a teacher, sometimes you're not aware of the problem, right? So there's that problem, and then there's a lack of training and education. So the teacher have to learn that parents have rights, and you can't take side. So go ahead.
And doctor, there's another thing that comes up right now that is very, very important that people understand is a lot of these school districts are straight school to prison pipeline school districts where no tolerance is, no tolerance that. So they influence and they have courses on this matter where they're actually telling people it's a fatherless program. It's a fatherless child. That's why he's doing that. It's a fatherless child. That's why he's going to juvie. It's a fatherless child. That's why he's acting that way. It's a fatherless. So they're acting and they're attacking. Well, again, like I said, it's gender bias. Because the reason I say this is when I saw it and start researching it, you're like, we have a lot of problems. And one is that because now you have teachers who are influenced by this way of thinking that when a father does come in that does have the right to see the child's records, they're going to push him away and say no. Understand? Because it's been indoctrinated in that way. And it's policies that they get that say, okay, we're not going to have no tolerance in bullying. If the bully comes up and you hit him, both of you are fighting, both of you are going to get suspended, both of you are going to get sent to juvie in the second round because both of you were assaulting each other. So now you have a child that's in 5th, 6th, 7th grade in juvie because he defended himself because he was being bullied. And all of a sudden they say, now you're here because, well, guess what? Does he have a father? Is a father around? No, the mom, it's a single mom. Oh, you see, I told you it's a fatherless kid. And it continues and it continues and continues. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate.
I'm not familiar with what you're talking about, but that definitely sounds very shows that the system, I guess, don't have the right kind of support and solution that is effective for children that struggling with challenges.
Yeah. And now you have a child that's breaking emotions because it affects the child going through all this negativity at home, especially if he's being alienated from one father. It's going to affect the child to the point that he's going to try to talk to somebody. He's going to try to say somebody. And guess what's going to happen? He's going to get indoctrinated inside the system that is there, and he's going to become a number. It is a sad case what we have. And I think all this comes from, I'm going to depict it as a metaphor. And here it says you cut off the head of the snake and you kill the snake. And I think the problem lies with the judges. I'm not saying if the judges would put their feet down and actually follow their own decrees that they write, okay? And if interference with child custody happens and the consequences are that if they're followed to a T, all this stuff here will start crumbling away and you're going to start seeing a lot more healthier children and grow up in our society. But until that happens, they're the head of this. That's what motivates the whole thing, because at the end of the day, they're going to end up at the court, whether it's for time not spent because interference occurred, and as we've talked about, or the child went off on the wrong side of perdition, and all of a sudden now he's in the court system. And they're the ones that can stop it. They're the ones that can see it. And they're also the ones that say it's deadbeat fathers. That's the reason why we have a bunch of kids. And it's funny. Those cases are in the same courts that see divorces, and they're in the same courts that they don't follow and enforce their own decrees that they wrote.
Yeah, lack of enforcement is a very big problem. Like you mentioned about custody interference. 2503 is a very important penal code in Texas, and there are similar penal codes in every state in the U.S. and also in some other countries, right? And for people that are not familiar with the legal system, a penal code means that it's actually a criminal offense. It's not a family court situation. It's not a civil dispute. It is a criminal offense. It's very serious. And like I just talked about, it is a criminal code in every state in the U.S. It just has a different code number in the Texas 2503. And the lack of enforcement, like why would you have a law and yet you're not enforcing it? Because then now, essentially, this law has no power because you don't do anything with it. The same thing with perjury, right? Perjury is lying under oath. You go to court and you're lying about it, you get caught, then there should be punishment for that. It is, I think it is a criminal offense in a number of states. I don't know if it's in every state, I haven't looked into that. But the same thing, when one parent create a false allegation, sometimes very serious false allegation, claiming the other parent sexually abused the child, for example, and then once that's proven that that's actually malice, it's actually false allegation with malice intent, so it is perjury, you're lying in court under oath, and yet nobody do anything about it. Even if you could, and so the lack of enforcement of the law is a very big problem. And like you said, if we could just create strict enforcement, then less people will lie on the oath because they go, whoa, I better not, because if I do, I'm going to have consequences. Not everyone, but some will do it regardless, but at least it's going to deter a lot of people.
Right.
The same with custody interference. If you actually enforce that law, a lot of people are going to go, whoa, okay, it's kind of serious. I don't want to go to jail. I better, this is the time that the father had the child. I better bring the child, allow the father to pick up the child, or whatever. But because there's no enforcement, well, I'm not going to lose anything. I'm not, there's no consequence for my action. I'm going to do just whatever I feel like, regardless of the long-term impact on the child, because I'm not seeing it right now. All I'm seeing is that I want to win over my ex-spouse, my ex-boyfriend, my ex-partner, whatever it is. I just want to win. So, that kind of thing is a very big problem.
Doctor, I've thought about this, and I've told my son and my daughter and my son, I got 2 daughters and a son. I said, you know what? Go into this. If you start liking somebody, start dating somebody, you think about having whatever, go in there with a prenuptial agreement with everything else, and one of them go with 50-50 child custody. And I said, put it down there, what school it's going to go to, where it's going to be there. And somebody said, oh, it's not enforceable. If everybody does it, eventually one's going to crack the glass.
And I mean, sometimes, yeah, it may not be enforceable, but it's just the fact that both parties agree with it. Sometimes it actually just makes them, even if you go to divorce, they should automatically agree with that before you have to actually enforce it. So, yeah, they definitely, and also it makes people kind of think about it ahead of time. But that's the thing, though, right? It's a difficult conversation because who wants to go, oh, I'm in love with you, let's get married, but let's create a contract for when we get divorced. Like but that's the reality of life is that, a lot of marriages end up in divorce, but you don't want to talk about that. And unfortunately, that's kind of the challenge,
You're going to have to somewhere. I'm sorry, but I guess now it's kind of like, you know what? You're going to have to. I've learned that. I learned it, and I kind of look at it and kind of like, if everybody does that, and if everybody had that, because a marriage is a contract. You're actually signing a license to get married. It's a contract. So contracts can be negotiated.
Right. I think it's to do with society stigma. So if we normalize talking about prenuptial agreement, normalize, pre-agreement about child, if we normalize it, then it's less of that stigma, then it becomes normal to go, okay, yeah, let's talk about getting married, but, let's talk about this. It becomes a normal thing. It doesn't become like, oh, this is an attack on the other person, right? Because people take this personally. It's like, what, you wanted to get married to me, and yet you want to talk about when we break up, right? So it's yeah, how do we normalize that? It's an important thing. And again, it's back to education and awareness and all that you're talking about.
Awareness, because listen, there's a lot of people that all of a sudden end up in court. They have no idea what's going on, and they love their family left and right. And all of a sudden now they're in the middle of this. And that's why we have a lot of suicides. And I'm talking about adult suicides, and we can go into that in a later time. But it's a sad part of reality, especially with a lot of people that I've talked to, and a lot of non-custodial parents that are involved here. The severity changes, like you said earlier, and that severity, if they're already in the extreme, that person is not that he's not sane, he's not rational in ways of thinking. There's some behavioral parts that are not there that we need to help them, and there's no help for that, and there's no groups for that. There's nobody, and if you go into the groups, it's not about talking about how I'm going to get back at my ex. There's no groups that can be manifested for that in the community. I mean, maybe we have to start some kind of support group. Okay? It is a problem that we have, and we have a lot of parents that are that way.
We do have different groups out there. I'm not saying that it's enough, but so for example, I'm from Victim to Hero Institute, and we do have a Facebook group, a private Facebook group for parents. And in there, it's not about getting back at your exes. It's about, support emotionally. It's about support of what to do in court situation. It's about sharing the struggle you're going through. It's about sharing success story. Talking about, reconnecting with your children after many years, or, fighting in court and winning, things like that. So there are support out there, but it's, I agree with you 100%. There's not enough of the support. And sometimes parents don't even know where to look to find the support that's out there.
we're looking at counseling for somebody that is dear to us, and the counseling, they close at 4 o'clock. Well, this person works till 5. Is there anything afterward? Oh no. Wait a minute. You just got 12 million in funding, and you're not open. You know what I'm saying? You're like, where's that going to?
But,
You know what? And I'm like, um, there's stuff out there that they painted in a beautiful picture, like if it's everywhere when you go to courts. Oh, it's here, it's there. It's nowhere to be found. So why do we expect, and listen, doctor, I know we're running out of time, and this, I don't want to change everything. The only thing I got out of the court was a contract with the Attorney General of the state of Texas that I have to be there until the age of 18 and I have to pay so much per month. It's called child support. That's a contract. And it's that contract is stipulated within another contract called a decree, which is an order of a judge, which makes that binding. So if I falter and not pay, I get licenses removed from me, I get rights removed from me, I get thrown in jail, removed from me. But yet alone, that non-custodial parent, and the majority of them are male, that non-custodial parent is going to be, they're not going to fix it. And if you do fix the salary because you lost a job or what have you, it's going to be 2-3 years down the road where you're already in so much arrears that they're not going to fix it for you. You have to do jail time. So it's a destructive system that we have. So if it's here in Texas, I'm sure it's in every state across the nation. So that type of contract that it's enforceable on one side, on the non-custodial parent, it's enforceable on that non-custodial parent that has to pay child support. But the rest of that contract or the decree is not enforceable for the custodial parent. That seems to me that there's a lot of issues with, might be First Amendment that we might be able to fight with, but I'm no lawyer in that sense. But I think there's a lot of wrongs in that. And until we change that, things are going to get better. What do you suggest we should do? That's what
I mentioned it's not a simple solution. It's changes that need to happen at all levels, and we need everyone to participate. We need to raise awareness at all levels, to any type, from parents to children to judges to lawyers, therapists, mental health professionals, to we need to not just raising awareness, but training, right? Providing education, providing training, and then resources. We need to make sure that victims have support, that parents have access and support. We need, we talk about, for example, judges don't even have time to cover their cases. So we need that kind of resources. We talk about, how do we manage those resources? Like you talk about, they receive funding, and yet they don't open for parents to be able to use the services, right? So access to services, we need to fix all of these. It's not one button that we can press and then that's done, right? It's not a simple thing like that. We need solution at all levels. And unfortunately, it requires everybody. And by the way, a lot of the time, people think, well, I'm too small to make a difference, right? I'm just a whatever, right? I'm just insert here. I'm just a parent. I'm just a teacher. I'm just a whatever, right? Sometimes you think that you're so small. No, don't underestimate the power that you have. You can do so much even by a little action. Contact your legislator. Contact the school teachers to educate them. For example, on Victim to Hero, we have a flyer for school. So, even if that's not your children's school, print it out and bring it, because if one teacher learned about it, it could help many children. one school accept that. There's just things like that. There's so many things that you can do, and there's a thing in chaos theory. It's called the butterfly effect, which means that even a small change in the system, in a chaos system, which is our society is, then you have no way of predicting how big the impact of that change. So and the reason it's called the butterfly effect is they talk essentially like across the ocean when a butterfly flaps its wings, it can create a major storm across the ocean, right? Because of this chaos theory. So it's the same thing. You have no way of knowing how powerful you are to take the action. The other thing that is so important is for parents to not give up hope. Because the moment they give up hope is when they lose everything. It's not just the system, it's not just the challenges that you're facing financially and emotionally and everything. But if you hold on to this hope, you will figure out that can empower you in so many ways. So that actually ultimately that's the biggest thing. I think that even though I agree with you, the court has so much power and everything, but it's that here in the parents. If you give up hope, you lose everything. So hold on to that hope. And how do you do that? Find it in here, in your heart. You have that love for your children. No one can take it away. That's inside you. No one has the power. No one can take that away. So if you take that power from your heart and put it here and not giving up hope, you will figure it out one way or another. And by the way, your child's going to grow out of the system. So it's not just 18 years within the court system. Your relationship with your child is for life. So really, never give up hope.
Absolutely. Your child is for life, and you might age out, as they call it. The child turns 18. You don't have to deal with a court system. You don't have to deal with that nonsense of it. You have the rest of your life to build with your child. I saw the alienation strongly in my girls than I did with my son. I'm sharing something personal. My oldest is 26, going 27. She is closer now to me than when she was before. She's opening her eyes to reality. My youngest is the one that is there right now. That in a little bit, hopefully, we'll see her for summer vacation. She's the one that's been affected the most. But it's not on my case, and I thank God it was never the severity of it. But I can tell you this, there's never been one weekend in my entire or vacation or what have you that has not been interfered with. And that's just the way life is, people. That's the cards that were dealt, maybe. But those are cards and how we take that for granted, how we take that for us to improve. You try not to argue, just try to take it like, that individual has a problem. So leave it in that sense. That's why you're no longer with them. But, that individual has a problem. The problem is that hopefully the tendencies of yours and your goals and the love that you give your children can make a difference in the long run. The problem that I see here is the interference from the outer groups, because the first person that's going to interfere is going to be either the educators or the police. Why? Because you're going to call for an interference with child custody and the police are going to come back. The only thing I tell you, everybody out there that's listening to this, if you have to file a report, whether in Texas or elsewhere, stay calm, stay collective, do not argue with the police officers. They've already made up their mind before you went there. Do not try to argue with them about the laws. Do not try to just get whatever incident, offense, whatever report there is. Take a picture with them, giving them a high five. Tell them thank you for coming out here and thank you for keeping the peace, and move on. You do not want to escalate the matter, because we've had a lot of fathers get killed when they go out there, either by the ex, by the ex's new husband, new boyfriend, father, police, etc. And we don't want you all to that happen to you. So just stay calm, stay collective, and move forward. On the other hand, I had they branded the gun on me back in 2020, and that's what led to a bunch of other stuff, which eventually led to a bill that we have in
Yes,
Texas.
I was going to bring that up because thank you so much for sharing your personal story, which is you, every visitation for you had been interfere. And, I was talking about the butterfly effect and the power parents can have is that that's what you did. That's exactly what you did. Is that it happened to you and you didn't give up. You actually had a conversation with Richard Raymond in Texas, and which is your representative, your local representative, and that resulted in the law, in what is the law today. And congratulations, over so many years, it didn't just happen overnight. It took quite a number of years for us to get here today. And I mean, we've been participating in trying to advocate and lobby for that law, but it's because thanks to you personally, really, you're the one that was the initiator of this law that now today it just became the law like weeks ago, right, in Texas. And so really now parents really have you to thank for, because you didn't give up. You had that pain, personal pain, and yet you took action, and it's a small action. It seems small, and parents can just ignore that, but you had that conversation with your local representative, and that became the bill. And then the bill one session didn't go through, go to another session. And the thing with Texas is the session doesn't happen every year. You have to wait 2 years for it. But now here we are. And yeah, a lot of people are involved with it, but it starts somewhere. It can be a small thing, it's not somewhere, but now we get to a point that now we have a law that's effective everywhere in Texas. So really makes a difference, parents. Everybody can make a difference. And thank you so much for taking actions.
I want to thank you for the kind words that you gave me for that, but there was a lot of people that were involved in that. And that incident sparked a lot of things, from talking to the fire chief, then fire chief was Chief Landine, who is now the police chief, some city council members that I was on the phone with, and also the city manager at that time, and other activists from around Texas. We were all concerned about everything that was going on because, even though my business is, at one time it was security and so on and so forth, I'm not really too scared of when somebody brandishes a gun at you. I've been around all that for a while. The problem is, if it would have been somebody else that does not know how to control the situation, that person would have been dead. And unfortunately, this took place for us to move forward, to change it, because I don't want this to happen to anybody. And we had several meetings with two state representatives. It was with Raymond and with State Representative King. We had a meeting with a bunch of activist groups that were all together as one. And we ended up with, is there any way we can tariff? And the person that brought it up with a city council by the name of Dr. Marta Martinez, it said, is there any way we can do a ordinance to give out a ticket? And I said, I think we can. And we all started looking into that. That became the resolution that Laredo put out in 2020. And that's what became of what is the bill now that was just passed. But the key to the bill for people out there that are listening is that you have to go to your municipality, whether it's a county or the city, and you have to place an ordinance. And that ordinance has to be enforced, which is now, and then you can go in there and it's a teardrop stage of they give a ticket instead of picking them up. It doesn't remove the felony level, but it just gives them a ticket. And if there's any questions, you see, when we talked to the police and we talked to there were a lot of excuses that occur. Is I'm afraid of my child's life going with the father. I'm afraid of going with a mother. So I'm going to protect him. I don't want him to go. So I'll violate that law. So they don't want to remove the child. So with this matter, if something is going on and you already have a ticket, you can present it in front of a judge and take the courses in case that happens. And if that's happening, everybody's going to be behind. But if it's not, then again, that's where it's at. It's going to stop the nonsense. And I think this will alleviate a lot of the alienation that will continue growing. The alienation is still going to be there, but it's not going to escalate. It's going to stop it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you point out something really important. Is that sometimes people said, "Oh, I'm a judge or I'm a teacher or I'm a neighbor, so it's hard for me to recognize." The thing is, alienation doesn't just happen one time. It's a pattern of behavior. It's fine when, let's say, two parents have custody time, and then okay, this Sunday it's supposed to be the mother to have time with the child, but the father is like, well, today is my, I have a big party at my house for, let's say, my uncle, cousin, whatever. So could I just have the child, right? If it happened one time, that's something, that's fine. But the thing with parental alienation is it's the repeated offenses. It never just happened once and then never again. It's the thing with alienation is that it's repeated pattern of behaviors. So that's why this law is so important. Is because if you just see repeating behaviors over and over and over, then it's so much easier for people to go, oh, I see it now. It's a pattern of behaviors. Therefore, it's a problem. It's not just like, oh, yeah, today I couldn't take the child to your house because my car broke down. Okay, I get it. All right, I understand. Oh, in the next, but every weekend, every time, there's some kind of excuses. Then yeah, at some point we're gonna have to look at that and go.
And then some people, it doesn't happen on the weekly basis, the weekend basis. It's kind of the interference is kind of like, oh, the kids say, oh, you tell them the next time we're here, we're going to be traveling to San Antonio, for example. All of a sudden you pick them up but she has a party with her friend and that's her best friend and she's going to go over there. Your dad doesn't love you. And as soon as that dad doesn't love you comes out, it starts crying, Dad, you don't love me. I have to go to the party over here. So that weekend is ruined because now you want to make sure that your child can go to that party because of what happened that was there. That type of interference occurs all the time. There's some interferences that only occur when it's a spring break or the summer visitation or Christmas or a holiday, and all of a sudden everything's fine until the holiday comes in, and all of a sudden now you don't see the child, or it's a big fight all over the place. Understand what I'm saying? And
Right.
those are parts of the spectrum that a lot of people don't understand. There's every weekend, there's every holiday, there's all the time.
Right.
But you're correct, Doctor. I want to thank you for enlightening us with what it is, and I'm glad that people in your field are also thinking in the same way, that it's the judicial system is actually the ones that we need to that are instigating this as well.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you.
So, folks, Doctor, once more, you have a good fourth. Everybody out there, God bless you. Stay safe.
Thank you. Let's go, brother. Thank you.